Now sitting in an office, in our home, in front of a computer screen, we think that we should be able to have our brain just stay focused continuously. It can't. Before we get started about tips, practical tips, I need to express to you some of the latest research about neuroscience, really about how the brain works, because we've been running on misinformation for decades, really. We've been running on misinformation in the way we're most productive and most focused in terms of how the brain works, all three brains to be exact. And we now know that we've been doing it wrong. And so, in a way, we could, with this new neuroscience research that's coming out, we need to start to shift the way we do our work to become more efficient and more resourced. So, I want to talk about what are the things that get in the way of being efficient and what are the things that we're not doing to resource ourselves. So, at the most basic level, everything about survival is about the brain. Everything about how this body that we're in is going to survive is about the brain. All the ways that we would die are really about the brain. Is asphyxiation, how many, we have 3 minutes, lack of food, we can go 3 to 4 weeks without a single grain of rice. Hypothermia out in the cold is all about the blood temperature change that runs to the brain, so whether the brain can work or not. Everything about survival is about the brain. So if we start there, and we know that the brain runs on 20% of the glucose that's in our bloodstream from any given meal that we eat. It's an old school computer. It needs a lot of energy. If we are not resourcing ourselves with calories every 3-ish hours through the day, we do not have performance. You can drink all the coffee you want, but you will never be as smart as if you're putting in glucose into your bloodstream every 3 to 4 hours through the day. And ideally, we're putting it in a food combination where we get a nice even release of blood sugars coming out of our digestive laboratory rather than a blood sugar spike from a Krispy Kreme donut. Because if we eat something that's highly glycemic, we're going to have a big flood of blood sugar because it's so quick to digest into our bloodstream. And then we follow that with an insulin spike. And if we're not moving our body, we're sitting and working at a computer, we can only use up about 20% of that energy with the brain, and the rest is going to get stored. And we'll start to build insulin resistance. So insulin taking the blood sugar to every cell. After a while, the membrane of the cell says, no, don't need it, I'm not doing anything. And that leads to disease. So for efficient brain activity, we want to fuel ourselves through the day. Another thing we need for resourcing the brain is to change things up. The brain is never meant to stare at one thing and do it for 8 hours straight. We are meant to adjust our attention and our focus throughout the day. We used to need it when we worked outdoors because we had to pay attention to all kinds of things in our environment just for safety. But now sitting in an office, in our home, in front of a computer screen, we think that we should be able to have our brain just stay focused continuously. It can't. So we're going to talk about how does it stay focused and how do we best employ that. And then, of course, if the brain isn't getting enough deep sleep, both REM and non-REM sleep, we wake up in the morning underutilized. We now know in the REM phase of sleep, which is mostly from about 3 o'clock in the morning till 6 a.m., everything that we've learned the day before gets reconfigured and anchored. That's when the file folders get moved along neural pathways from short-term experiences into long-term memories that help us engage things that we've done the day before and become part of our capability repertoire for moving forward. So sleep is intrinsically important for brain function. We even know flat out that people who are not sleeping on average 7+ hours a day, your likelihood of Alzheimer's and other dementia go through the roof. So let alone being efficient at work, we're basically punishing our brain. Now, when it comes to focusing ourselves, we need, now that we're not working in offices with anybody else, we need to take command of our own time. And we need to be as efficient as possible to utilize that brain power in the potency segments that it can best employ itself. So if we can't focus forever on something, the second rule about how the brain best works is it can never focus on two things at once. Never. It's a brain through the prefrontal cortex, the central part of the front lobe of our brain, it actually will split its attention to try to focus on two things. And as soon as it does that split, basically our brain concentration power, our focus capabilities is halved. More recent research shows that the more we try to focus on two things at once, like our computer screen or my phone that buzzes, and all of a sudden I'm looking at this and then I'm looking at that, it takes 19 to 26 minutes to come back to the same level of concentration that I might have been when I was writing or reading a report when I get interrupted by a ping or a buzz. The brain just cannot go back to the same depth of focus that it was in. That's a given for all of us. So the less distractions, the less interruptions we have, the more functional and the more efficient we're going to be. So we'll talk about how to strip that stuff down. But following down that brain and the prefrontal cortex having to split between two things and our capability and function splitting is we also basically are going to lose memory. So every time we split our concentration, we lose about 3 times the amount of memory that we would take and keep if we're just staying focused on one. And the most recent research is the most disturbing is our IQ drops. We actually use our intelligence quotient the more we try to multitask. I'll just let that settle for a second. So knowing now what we know of how the brain works compared to what we knew 10 years ago or 20 or 30 years ago, we have to change the way we work. And so there's all kinds of studies being done on how do we be efficient and how do we best utilize the energy that we've got coming in through the food we eat and the rest that we're giving the brain so that it can be most efficient. And so one of the things that's most powerful is to set your day up. So the beginning of your day or the end of the previous day, we set a list of priorities for the coming workday. And if we take out a pad of paper and a pen and actually physically write the priorities of what we want to do in the coming day, 3 things happen. First, we are thinking, so our intelligence of our neocortex is involved. Second, our brain body wiring through the nervous system is involved. And thirdly, when we read our priorities, the visual cortex back to the neocortex is involved. So 3 parts of the brain get involved when I write a priority list. And this makes it more potent for us. One of the studies I read said, write top 10 things that you want to accomplish in your day. Then take a pause and take those 10 and synthesize them to 5. So you strip away 5 right away. Then you get up and you go for a little walk, or you do a little stretch, or you go get a little something to eat, and you come back in 5 minutes and you take the 5 and you take them down to 3. So you're going to go basically from 10 to 5 to 3. And then you're going to put those 3 into a schedule. And you have to pick the priorities between the 3. So you might adjust them, but you're going to write down the top 3. And immediately that first one is going to go into your first segment of time for work. And then the second one's going to go into this next box of time you're going to have for work, and the third one. And once those 3 are done, you go back to what's left of your list of the 7, and you do the same thing, 7 to 5 to 3. And then you go into those 3. By writing them down, it becomes more focused and concentrated through 3 parts of the brain. Is this making sense to you guys? Now, there's a variety of different studies and research groups that have said we have only so much concentration. And this is where you can experiment. Some people work really well in 90-minute blocks. And so they put their first priority and they're going to give it 90 minutes, and then they have a timer on their phone and it goes off and they get a 10-minute break. Other people are better to go 25 minutes with a 5-minute break. Experiment with each and then find which is your most potent, focused, and concentration time where you can work without needing to refocus on something else. Now, say of those 3 priorities we listed, we work on the first one in that first 90 or 25 minutes. Then we might take a break before we go to the second one or complete the first one, and we might check our emails, or we might check our texts. But in that block of 90 or 25 minutes, we're on airplane mode. There's no buzzes and texts coming in. There's no interruptions. We might even put on our computer a distraction blocker, a social media blocker like Freedom or App Block or Focus Me, so that you don't get interruptions coming through app sales or social media or Instagram or Facebook popping up all over your screen. Basically, the screen is for work and no interruptions for that 90 minutes. Then you might take 5 of that 90 minutes to just check any just basic communication coming in, take it off airplane mode, check that, and then do something resourcing for the other 5 minutes. Like maybe do some stretching to roll your shoulders back, or leaning up against the wall and letting your back stretch out. Or sitting on your chair with your legs crossed in figure 4 and coming forward so that you can stretch those glute muscles from sitting in a chair too much. Or get up and go to the refrigerator and get an apple and 2 tablespoons of almonds or seeds. Again, to keep the brain going. So we work hard in a segment, we get a break, we might take half of that break to get caught up on social media or any communication. The other half is to resource either our body or our blood sugar level. You might take the 5 minutes and do a 5-minute close your eyes and a mindfulness meditation. Just again, not to look at the screen, but to get a complete break. Of course, all the things like get up, stand up desks and take part of your day to stand and part of your day to sit, these are all beneficial and will help the day feel more enjoyable and also make us more productive. The more enjoyment we have in our office, the more the office is our own sanctuary of beauty and greenery and posters that we like, all of that helps. Okay. So even at home, you can make your office a beautiful thing. Like I can see Jeanette's got some flowers, I think, in behind her in a vase. Right? Why not? And if you can place your computer, like I have a beautiful big window here that I'm looking across the whole town, the lake, and an Elephant Mountain, so that I'm working hard and then I might take a pause and purposefully take my eyes away from the screen and just breathe for a minute. And just enjoy nature. I let the clouds, the sunlight, the sky come in. The more we can break the reality of just screen time to nature time, again, we're resourcing our brain and we're flipping it around. Music has been helpful for a lot of students, and a lot of people find they can concentrate better when there's classical music. So music that's got lyrics or pumping out workout music, probably not so good. Classical has hands down been the best music for brain wave, but there's new studies and new forms of electronic music that are coming out that are orally for the ears, working different hemispheres of the brain. And you can experiment with that as well. And Alex put a link to that in that last Healthy Bites for you. But these are things that can make also a white noise experience in our office. So if we're working at home, we're not hearing our spouse or our kids in the next room or down the hall or in their office while they're doing schoolwork, or the dog running up and down the hallway, or whatever else is going on that can become distractions for us. So we need to, again, sanctify our space, make it beautiful, make it work for all of our senses as much as possible, so we can keep that focus while we're on task. Now, those of you that have come to Mountain Trek before, you've heard Kathy and I talk a lot about the acronym SMART: specific, measurable, attainable or achievable, relevant or realistic, and anchored in time. These 5 components of that acronym are really great, either again at the end of your day, where you might take 20 minutes before you log off to go through the next day's planning and use that SMART acronym to go, okay, I've got this big project or a new project I've never worked on before. How do I break it into bite-sized pieces that allow me to make sure that each of those actionable tasks go through that SMART analysis, so that each of them are measurable, anchored in time, super specific and achievable, so that together they add up to me getting that goal done or that bigger project done. So a lot of times we can be frozen in procrastination when we know we have a big project to do or something we've never done before. Use the SMART acronym to break it into bite-sized tasks, and then put those tasks into your day, into those 25 or 90-minute segments. And you'll be amazed at how those things adding up get you the top of the mountain, just like the baby steps that Kathy's always told you to take. And your overall project won't feel so onerous. It won't feel like such a big mountain if you're taking the zigzag step approach to it. I would also recommend using a timer, and I use a timer a lot when I'm coaching for guests right now. And I would recommend getting a really nice, pleasant timer. Like there's the one I use is called the Insight timer. And so a nice Tibetan bell pings, 5 minutes before my 25 or 50-minute or 90-minute work session is over. I get this nice harmonious bell go off, and then I know, okay, I've got 5 minutes to just wrap this up, and then I'm going to take a 10 or 5-minute break. I set my timer for those 10 minutes. So you're punctuating your day into these efficiency blocks, but you're also making it pleasant, and just like you're in a meditation hall basically, and someone's just hitting the little gong and you get into the next event. So these little tricks just make everything feel a little bit more enjoyable, as well as is segmented, so that we can stay focused. We're not trying to do 4 things at once and fit them into this huge spread out day. We really believe in owning the day. Alex and I make this a ritual in our lives. So we own the beginning of our day and the end of our day. It's not for work. It's not for CNN. It's not for my kids. It's not for my spouse. It's for me. And I believe in taking that to work as well. We need to own the beginning of our day to make sure that we're all set up and we're comfortable. We've got our bottle of water. We've got our timer set. We know what our priorities are. And the same thing at the end of the day. And you can have a designated journal that's just your work journal. So at 20 minutes before 4 o'clock, I'm finishing at 4. I'm going to write down my priorities for tomorrow. I'm clearing my desk so that when I walk in tomorrow morning, my space looks inviting. It doesn't look like a World War III went off. And I feel like I can settle into it and then be peaceful and calm and focused, so that I can go into what I'm working on. So owning the workday and owning your overall day are very powerful ways to feel like day, work, and life just all get mooshed together. And this is a dangerous thing about working from home. Little things like working in your uniform, very powerful. Try not to work in your jammies, because then work and life just get all mooshed together, and our focus again gets split too easily. Oh, the dog needs to be taken out. Someone's calling down the hall or whatever. That's their problem. You don't get interrupted when you're in your 90-minute or your 25-minute focus time. You might say, I'll deal with it. I've got 15 more minutes. I'll deal with it then. And it's yours. You own it. And because we're working alone, we have to take ownership. There isn't anybody else down the hall, not a supervisor, a manager, or a coworker, or anybody. We have to take control of our lives. Now, I'd like to open it up at this point for any questions anybody has about either the resourcing of ourselves and our brain or the time management, space management, owning of the workday. Anybody bumping into anything unusual working from home with family members, or the loneliness of working alone, or anything like that?
Kirk, I have a question about the music. So I play music nonstop while I'm working, and partly to drown out other noises, but partly to get into a flow state. I'm kind of worried that if I'm constantly putting music into my ears, that's not healthy. Do you know, like, is there a decibel range I should stay in, or that's just a concern of mine?
The studies that have been done mostly on university students have shown the type of music's very important. So it needs to be relaxing in a way, not jarring, and the volume needs to be low, like what you're doing, to create a white noise sound. So it shouldn't be so voluminous that it's distracting again, because then we're splitting our brain again between what we're hearing and what we're trying to focus on with work. So if it's down lower, it's not going to cause us to split our brain. One of the ways hypnosis works is a very common way for hypnosis in therapy to work is they'll have two voices come in at the same time, and they'll be almost talking over each other, and it causes the neocortex to split, that prefrontal cortex, and then the subconscious takes over. When the neocortex is getting split, then we go down to the two lower brains, the limbic and reticular brain. And so then we can't make decisions and function in our creative work. So we've got to keep the distraction of the music at a low enough level that it's a background kind of wash, rather than something, oh, I've got to pay attention to that violinist right now, or whatever's going on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've noticed that I'm very sensitive to lyrics. Like, I'll play
Don't play lyrics.
Playlist at some point, and it'll say no lyrics, but every now and then lyrics will get in. It does. It jars me to get to the next song.
Because then your attention is being split again to something coming in here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's another playlist that a buddy of mine recommended on Spotify. It's called Lo-Fi Beats. And I think it's been designed specifically for work.
Yes,
find that in the comments.
There's a lot of research being done on this, and there's a lot of audiophiles that are working on what's the best recipe for the brain while we're focusing. And it's working.
I was just going to ask the same thing. Is some level of music that meets those criteria better than no noise at all?
Yes, like I was saying, the research they did, Mona, on university students with, hip hop versus classical versus reggae, they found classical, even more than jazz, will cause the cognitive system to have better memory. So it does something about left and right hemisphere, because most of the music is going to be coming through right hemisphere, yet most of our focus when we're doing analytical work is going to be left hemisphere. So there tends to be this bridging that occurs between the hemispheres. But again, it can't be taking our left brain to pay attention to a soloist doing something, and then we're getting distracted and split again into multitasking.
I have a different question. It's Christina. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
So I actually enjoy the flexibility of working from home because instead of sitting in an office for an 8-hour chunk with meetings back to back or phone calls, I kind of like to do maybe 2 hours and then take an hour off to laundry, coffee, a walk. But then my day is actually longer in that way, in that I work for 2 hours, take an hour off, then work for an hour. So it actually spreads, let's say, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., but not constant. or I do this whole block where it's like 9 to 5, the usual way. So what is your take on either way? Or I kind of like working at night too, so I don't mind the 2 hours at night. I'm not trying to blend both work and play, but I like the flexibility as well. What's your take on the two ways?
I think that if we looked at what we used to do and we had to commute to work and then we worked whatever 8 to 9 or 10 hours, average person in an office now, and then we had to commute back, all of that much of our day was given to work. So if we take the commute now, and we own that, and we could do a workout or make a breakfast, get some sunlight in for our hormonal balancing, having breakfast by a window, go for a walk, do some things for ourselves in that typical half hour to an hour we used to commute. And the same thing at the end of the day, we'll feel again that we're not giving our day away if we can segment it. That's how most people feel. Whereas if you work, stop, and you're blending laundry and doing other things in with work, and all of a sudden 9 to 9, and then you're going to go to bed for maybe 7 hours, it doesn't leave much lifetime to then start a creative pursuit or read a mystery novel series or do whatever it is that brings also joy and growth on the other spheres of our life. So yes, you could still be productive for work, but so much of your workday is now spread across your whole day. But if you were going to do, say, these 90-minute windows or 25-minute windows, and in the middle of the day, or you work for 4 hours and you take an hour and go do a workout, that's fine. I just wouldn't spread the day 12 hours.
Okay, that was just my example, but what I was trying to get at is it's segmented now, and I do take time off then to either read a book or go for a walk or do a workout or
Great. Then you're
take lunch.
resourcing. So that's good. If you're mixing resourcing with productivity, then that's great. Yeah.
I think something to question and be mindful of is after that work time ends, say it's 9 o'clock, like you mentioned, is work still on your mind? What I found when I worked in San Francisco and started a company and didn't have two lives, I had my work and my personal life all intertwined, is that there was no downtime from work ever. So midnight, I'd get a ping on my phone and I'd answer an email. So I was always on. And that to me was terribly unhealthy. So now by setting work limits, say it's 5 or 6 o'clock, I'm able to unplug from work. And that to me has been sort of the most healthy thing.
It's very important. We have to unplug. And this is one of the dangers of working from home, is it's easy for it to spread through the whole day. And at the end of the day too, most research says if you're going to end your day at 5 or whatever your day is going to be ended, then you close the computer, you clear the desk, you walk out of the office. That's your workspace and it's done. Because then we can get into relationship or creativity or whatever the other aspects of our life we want to expand. We need to do that for balance.
Yeah, sometimes it feels easier when things just weave in and out, and you do have time to do laundry in the middle of the day, and it happens over a longer period, and that's fine. But I think that's the danger in my mind, is just that it continues to blur throughout your entire day.
Yeah, it can. And that's why I like those segmented things where we go a 90-minute, you set your alarm, you work focused, and then you get your break, or a 25-minute, whatever works for your mind. And I would also recommend journaling a little bit about work. So if you're experimenting with things like time segments or resourcing yourself in those 5 or 10-minute breaks, check in and notice what you're noticing. That's where mindfulness comes in. Don't just take any of these tips that we're sharing and just plug them in and do them and think that they're going to do something for you. Each of us is different, and we have a different body, a different mind, a different life, a different lifestyle, different family, different time constraints. So you've got to weave some experimentation into it, and journaling is a great way to practice mindfulness to see whether it's working or not. Then it's real for you. And when you find what's real for you and it's working, ideally, just about all research is saying right now that we are overworking hours and we're under efficient because of the distractions that we're living with. We are less efficient than people were before 2012 when we started putting computers in our pockets. People were more efficient then. We are less efficient now, and we're working longer hours. So what I'm trying to share with you is how do we work with the most efficient potency of our brain power so that we could actually work less hours and have a richer life, so that we can go for walks and we can take a painting class online or learn a new instrument or flower arrangements or whatever it is that you've wanted to do.
I personally think it's about time that we sort of dissolve the typical hours. Like if we are doing what you're saying and we're pre-planning our day and we're cutting down from 10 down to 5 down to 3, and we get those 3 things done, you should leave the office.
Yes.
That's a full day. You've just accomplished everything you need to do. Why grind yourself for whatever's left over in that clock?
And we all know this, but we need to say it to each other enough that we never can finish our job. In any given workday, we'll never finish. So we just do our best and prioritize and be efficient and focused, and we feel good about that efficacy, and we can walk away from the computer in our office feeling that was a productive day. I feel great about that day, rather than thinking, oh, just one more email I could check or one more little thing I'll get done, and then who knows, or it doesn't really make a difference in the big picture because there's never an end.
Kirk, we have a few questions in the chat, and
Okay.
I know you have to.
And I've got to go for a birthday.
So let's do rapid fire here. Okay. So first question is about having dog. We always talk about the benefits of petting your animal.
Yes.
And how that is a great thing to do in that 10 minutes off or that 5 minutes off.
Absolutely.
What about the dog's needs? Do you allocate that time into your time off, or do you allocate it separately?
I mean, one of the very best things about having a dog is they force us to take a walk. So you might do 2 25-minute sections, or maybe 3 to 4 hours of segmented, focus, little resource, focus, little resource. And then after the third block, you go for a 20-minute walk with the dog. The trick is, no matter what we're doing to resource us, it shouldn't, whether it's music or pet or whatever, it shouldn't become then another distraction that causes the mind to split and try to multi-focus, because then we lose focus. So you have to figure out what works best with your dog. If 20-minute work sections work best so that you can support them in whatever their bodily function needs are, then that might work best for you.
2 more questions. This one can be a very quick answer. Speaking of sleep, what do you think about sleep devices such as an Oura Ring or a Fitbit that tracks your sleep? What are your thoughts on those devices?
I think if you feel like you're waking up in the morning and you're not fully rested, then there's something going on in terms of depth of sleep. And those devices that are tracking our sleep are tracking movement in the bed. And basically every time we move, we're pulling ourselves out of the delta wave state of deep sleep. So getting a track on yourself to see how many hours of truly deep REM or non-REM sleep you're getting is a great starting point to then say, okay, maybe I'm only getting 5 hours of deep sleep a night. I've got to figure out some strategies to tweak that. So that could be at the beginning of the night in terms of my rituals before bed, where I could have a warm bath, I could dim the lights, I could do a little meditation or yoga, I could read a little book outside of the bed with a low light, 40-watt incandescent bulb, and then I get into the bed. Or if I wake up in the middle of the night for a bio break and I can't get back to sleep, then I'm going to use this meditation app or tool that we've shared through Mountain Trek lots that can help me pull back into that delta wave state. We have to sanctify sleep. We just have to. It shortens our life if we're not averaging. We have to get over 6. Anything 6 or under is shortening our lives. That's just fact. All research says that. So getting 6 to 8 is where we want to work that edge. And consistency is the most important thing. We can't burn the candle all week and then think we're going to catch it up on the weekend. The brain doesn't work like that. Hope that answers the question. One more quickie.
Yeah, one more quickie, and I think this will be good point to leave on, and a little bit more universal. We've talked about a great number of tips and tricks here, but what about the discipline of implementing them? What are maybe 2 or 3 of your top tips for actually having that discipline?
From Mount Trek's perspective, we might have a list of 10 things across the day that we would like to do to become more resourced and more efficient. But we're only going to work on 2 maximum. Again, we can't have too many things we're working on, or we split our attention, and then our willpower gets split, and then the potency of making that action repeat enough times before it becomes habituated is less. So to power up willpower, we want to work on 1, maximum 2 things at a time. So one might be cleaning off your desk and setting up the priorities for the next day. And the second one might be petting your dog for 5 minutes after each 90-minute section of work. And that's all you do for now. And then once those become habits and you do a little journaling to see if they're making a difference in your life, then you go down your list and maybe you start having morning or afternoon snacks, or you start finding some testing to see what kind of music could improve your memory or your concentration. You just work your way down your list. Don't try to do 10 tips at once, because it's just too much pressure. And when we don't do something, we judge ourselves, all of us. When we're not successful, we live in a culture that if you're not successful, you're a loser. So that's ingrained in our subconscious. So be kind to yourselves and make sure you're just going to do one thing that you know you can be successful at. Once it's rigidified into your lifestyle, then you pick a second one, and then the next one. Again, we're offering a whole plethora of different ideas in different directions. You have to find the one that best works for you. I'm not saying any one of these is more important than any of the others. And make your life an experiment. It's more playful that way. Okay. Have a great couple of weeks. We're going to be on with a couple of special guests, I think, in 2 weeks, right, Alex?
Yeah, we have some of my wife's new best friends that she met here in Santa Barbara. They're twins, Shari and Lucy, I think. We're just getting introduced to them, but they are authors of several cookbooks, and they just released their newest cookbook about how to eat for brain health and Alzheimer's and brain disease prevention. And so we invited them to join us for the next health talk, which will be 2 weeks from today, so December 18th, and they have graciously accepted. So we'll have a couple of very high energy twins on for the next health talk, talking about exactly that. So they should be fun. Should be a
really fun.
Great addition to our community.
Yeah. Take good care of yourselves, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks,
for now.
Kirk. Good night. Have fun.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Thanks for joining. Good to see you all. Say hi to Louise, Kirby.
Thanks. Finally figured out where my mute button was.
Bye, Mona.